welcome back to my channel. Hello to all the fellow humans in the world and the non-humans of the world and the animals of the world. Hello, animals. I'm just playing. I seen that on Roseanne when she was interviewing Audra Lynn, and I thought that was hilarious. I was just like, Roseanne is buck wild, but I like some of her content. She's really got entertainment value anyway. I wanted to say welcome back. We are on episode 3 of season 4 here, and I've discovered another mystery, like how I usually always do. And just when I always get to thinking that, each season I do these episodes, I think, okay, I've ran out of mysteries, stuff to talk about. And then usually towards the end of each cycle, I end up getting another batch of mysteries, just stumbling upon it. Usually it's late at night when I can't sleep, or I've had too many energy drinks, or I'm just simply fucking bored. So, and in these cases, it helps to be bored because it really does lead me down to quite some fascinating things. So, we're going to be talking about today a Playboy model who is also known for horror movies. You might have remembered her in the Bear Wench Project, which is pretty much an erotic comedy knockoff of the Blair Witch Project, but she was also frequently in Playboy in the 90s. Her name is Lorissa McComas. And I guess in 2009, there was a petition up online asking the Virginia State Police to reconsider looking into the investigation of her death. And I'm going to read a little bit of the petition, and it says the issue. Lorissa McComas was a beautiful model and actress who was originally from Mason, Ohio, a suburb of Cincinnati. She was in countless movies and publications dating from the early 90s through the late 2000s. During the closing months of 2006, Larissa had filed for divorce and moved from Melbourne, Florida to Waverly, Virginia in efforts to free herself from her alcoholic and abusive husband, Doug Taylor. During this time, she was in the process of winning back custody of her son, who was taken from her by the Florida CPS due to unfit living conditions. These conditions were largely the fault of Doug's drunken gun singling behavior, i.e., Doug shooting a gun through a door knowing their son was on the other side. Larissa's efforts in leaving Florida and Doug were the assistance of her fiance and protector, David Ketter, whom she had planned to marry once a divorce from her husband was finalized. After a series of bizarre and blatant abuses of power courtesy of the ATF, David found himself in Gilmore Federal Prison on bogus charges, leaving Larissa without financial or needed support. Soon after this occurred, Doug Taylor came to Waverly and began a near 3 year cycle of abuse until her alleged offing of herself on November 3rd, 2009. Though Larissa's death was ruled as an offing by the Waverly Police Department, there were massive irregularities in Doug Taylor's alibi. He changed his story no less than 3 times in the first 4 hours, as well as several pieces of evidence suggesting Doug to be the cause of her death. So I'm going to continue reading a little bit more of what they are saying, and then it just gives a rundown of what was going on at the time. They're just basically ensuing, the horrible, tragic details that Larissa went through, and it kind of seems like a setup from what I'm reading, so I'm going to keep continuing. Doug had Larissa call into work for him November 3rd, 2009 at 10 a.m. to say he was sick. In reality, he was still intoxicated from the previous night he spent drinking and verbally abusing her. When Larissa called into Doug's work at Glen Texaco in Waverly, VA, that morning, she was said to be in good spirits. Larissa was killed at approximately 10:30 a.m. November 3rd, 2009, with a Mossberg 12-gauge pop shotgun that Doug always had by his side and had previously pulled on the other visitors to her home. So, something within literally a half an hour, he called Doug had called Doug had Larissa call into work for him. So within a half an hour, something must have happened. I'd imagine some type of argument, some misunderstandings, or obviously something crazy happened. So several residents of Waverly have said that Doug was very abusive and irrational during some of the period leading up to her death. Most importantly, the night prior to her death, in the morning of her death, Larissa did not know how to use a pop shotgun. Larissa's fingerprints were not even on the shotgun. Larissa did not even have powder burns or residue on her hands. Doug had powder burns and blood on his hands, in his hair. His fingerprints were on the weapon of the death. And also, the most incriminating of all is the fact that Doug spoke with David in federal prison on November 9th, 2009 at 9:05 p.m. and confessed to the crime. Federal prison phone calls are recorded, as we all know, as a matter of policy, but the federal government elected not to pursue the matter despite having a taped conversation confession of an admitted murderer. And then the rest states, after the police declared Larissa's death as an offing, Doug disappeared along with Larissa's film and print originals that he continued to sell and collect profit via the internet. So a real, like in my opinion, scumbag. Like you already did maybe something sinister, and you're still gonna milk as much money off of her, even though you might have had something to do with it. May or may not, in my opinion. So his whereabouts are still unknown. Justice demands that the case be reopened. All audio evidence currently possessed by the federal government, and that Doug Taylor be charged with Larissa Comas' murder. A beautiful model slash actress and a mother of an innocent child has been taken from the world, and also a very potential dangerous man still is able to walk free, and it's very likely that an entire community in Waverly, Virginia is being protected by an incompetent or corrupt police department. We therefore petition the state of Virginia to reopen Larissa's case to see if that Larissa's family, friends, and the American people, and most importantly, Doug Taylor, have their day in court. Thank you, is what it all said. So I also digged into Larissa's friend. I think he is the one or someone that she was close to started this petition and even had a website kind of giving updates on what's going on. And I'd like to think, too, as well, in my opinion, that a lot of the fans that I have seen comment on this are kind of questioning the same thing that I am. Like, well, what's with the lack of investigation into her death when it was so obvious and evident when all other clues state to the otherwise? Is it just a simple fact that there's not a I don't know. It seems like there's proof. I was going to say, is it a simple fact that there's not enough proof? But it seems to be that there is quite a tremendous amount of evidence here that I don't know. Maybe is it possible to, take this case to another state? I don't know how these laws work being over here in Canada, but I'm willing to learn that. But I also went into diving into the guy that had a Lorissa McComas website that kind of gave a update on all these things pertaining to her death and the investigation. And I guess the guy who was supposedly in question, I guess he ended up dying, Doug Taylor, and it stated that on the website that was giving follow-ups to this case. And yeah, I think that's very weird that in 2009 that this was an issue that was happening and again went under the radar like most of these subjects do. And really, when you go on to look at Larissa McComas's profile on Google or just simply Google this matter, only this petition and her friend's website comes up. And what boggles my mind is the lack of media support. I do even believe that one of the articles I read about this is that someone in a newspaper was going to write an article about her death and then last minute kept holding it off and didn't want to put it in the newspaper, which I find also very odd. Like, I have so many questions, like what's with the lack of investigation, what's with that guy at the newspaper wanting to do an article but kept delaying it over and over. Like who was this Doug Taylor character, first of all? Like, I tried to Google him and see what he was all about since he had passed away, and there was not much information. So I'm very curious how Larissa met this guy and how he managed to make it look like she offed herself. And as you've seen on my channel, we've also had similar cases on here where I don't think they've used a weapon to go out, if you know what I mean. So yeah, the I'm just wondering why the lack of investigation on the official side, and why also the media, not some kind of public media form, even some of the bloggers out there would be interested in reporting on it. Maybe they did at the time, but it seems like this got no mainstream media coverage, like even a local news channel to talk about it. And it's funny how some of these issues just go right under the radar and swept under the rug, and they're not even really talked about. So if this was not really, in my opinion, even talked about a lot, or wasn't considered a hot topic, if you will, even at the time, then no wonder why there was such a lack of investigation, in my opinion. Because I think if maybe there were more media coverage, more newspapers to help and kind of get the attention on it, and kind of get also maybe the public to bitch about it as well, maybe this issue could have been solved a little bit more faster. And we're got to consider that this was 2009. Social media wasn't the instant impact that we can get it out to be now, and even now it doesn't even matter. On a side note, I've had missing family members, by the way, go missing, and ask them to share the posters, and nobody's in the biggest rush to share posters. So meaning in 2025, it doesn't really matter. People are either going to talk about it or they're not, and this seems to be sadly another case of that. Because if people would have just came together and rallied together and really just posted this like crazy on social media or wherever, this issue could have been solved and done, and there could have been some justice in real life for Larissa's family and friends, and anyone really that knew her, and her fans as well. And and also very importantly, that Doug Taylor got his moment in court, and that she got her legacy, got some justice out of this. So that's what I mean by, like, it doesn't really matter if you talk about it or ask people to share this, even if this, let's say, hypothetically were to happen now. It's either a point of people want to share it or they don't. I just, on a side note, I never got why people never wanted to share my missing cousin posters. Like, I really don't get it. I don't understand. Like, what's the big deal about sharing a missing person's photo? Like, how low can you go? Like, put yourself in my position, and if you ask me to share a photo and I'm just like, nah, I don't want to share your missing people photo, I don't want to help. But I guess that's my foundation in my argument here, is that, like, even if this were to happen today, either people are going to look into it or they're not going to look into it. And sadly, this happened in 2009. So I feel like because of the public, the fans, and also not so much the guy doing this whole change.org, he's the whole catalyst behind this, but I feel like if the media and the fans were maybe just a little less lazy and got on it, this could have been solved and had some justice for Doug Taylor before Doug Taylor passed away. And I'm not too sure, in my opinion. I can't say 100% for sure if Doug Taylor was responsible for Larissa's death, because it was all just alleged and very much a big speculation when she was alive. So I can't pinpoint and say that. Everything in this video is always an opinion, and from A to Z, the video. But it's funny how the lack of investigation, the lack of media, the lack of fans even wanting to help, it just blows my mind. I feel like if people were to just back then really push this online every day, and maybe got someone to hear it, some YouTuber, somebody out there to really bring attention to it. And it's really sad that so much time has went by at the time when this did happen, to the point where no justice was even solved for anybody. It went on to the point so long that Doug Taylor eventually ended up passing, from my understanding. So is there really any justice in that? And so when I did discover this case, I was kind of interested in going, well, what are all the, my main concern is why the lack of investigation, like I always go on about. Like, she has a kid, she has family, she has friends, like, and the fact that this issue and this petition, if you will, wasn't even a bigger deal really blows my mind. But the petition did get about 2,574 supporters that signed it at the time of when it closed. And I'd really like to know the guy who set up the website, the change.org petition. I'd like to know whatever came about. I'd really like to interview him and just ask him like, why was it so hard to get a good investigation into this? Like, what are your opinions on it? Like, why was Doug Taylor allowed to go off for so long? In my opinion, also on a side note, in my opinion, did he maybe know some people, and this is why it led to such a long progression of nothing? So when I discovered this case, I really just got kind of pissed off for Larissa because she's been quite a few cool B movies that I've seen over the years as a child and through my teens and early adult years, and it's kind of interesting to see that this whole topic at hand just kind of really was never even a big deal or even more talked about. And honestly, it's just sad for me to see that only over 2,000 people signed the petition at the time, and I feel like this could have gotten solved more, or even just like a local cable channel to talk about it. Somebody, one of those murder mystery shows or something in America on TV that could have helped with this and really push forward the message and try to really get the topic at hand really settled and get justice done. So I just don't understand how this happened and nothing ever came about it. And for Larissa's sake, I really wanted to include her in this series because I feel like, her legacy and this whole topic really deserves to have some more light than what it ever did. So I know that this was a hot topic for quite some time, and there was quite a few people keeping up with the case back then in 2009. And I'm not discrediting, anyone's hard work there by, saying like, oh, I'm hoping this video helps. But really, I really do hope that this video sheds light on, the lack of investigation on Larissa's death, and maybe just in hopes that by posting this, you guys would look into it, and I'll even leave the article down below for you guys for the change.org petition on Larissa Comas's death. And you guys can maybe look into it and just, feel free to read it. And it's a shame that all these topics that I end up finding about, there's never usually justice for the ones that are actually murdered, and not ones that in my opinion, I consider mysteries, but it's always some kind of lack of investigation or just not enough work being done by officials. And I'd like to think at times with my channel, I can be, in my own kind of detective with things. Not that I'm certified by any means, but I really do look into research and time frames and all sorts of things, people, buildings, and this one seems kind of like a closed case to me, considering what I just read. Like, his fingerprints were on the gun. She didn't even own a gun. I'm assuming, I don't know, like, I'm assuming the gun was maybe registered in his name, in my opinion. I think so. If all these factors stated in the change.org petition down below, I mean, why was no one in the biggest rush to lay charges? Is it because he had a good lawyer? I'd really like to interview the guy that was the main force, or I mean, the main driving force behind Larissa Comas's death and fighting for her justice. And he made a website. I'd really like to interview him on just so many questions, like lack of investigation, why he got away with it for so long. Like, how can all these big clues and big factors that seem just so obvious to me, in my opinion, I think, like, how can that all be combined and then still no justice for Larissa? So if you have watched the Bear Wench Project, you probably have seen it, and she was in that movie with Julie Strain, which is another B movie queen who sadly passed away, not from anything sinister, but um, yeah, Larissa McComas' death is really shitty, if you ask me, and it's always some kind of lack of investigation, and I'm just gonna blame the media and the fans for not really pushing this forward and really pushing it in people's faces online, because justice could have been served. I just think people's lack of laziness of not wanting to share it for whatever reason, like perhaps a missing poster, like I said, I just don't get people's not wanting their unwavering help, if you will. And it's just such a simple click and a share, and people are just got better things to do. But karma does come back, because, on a side note, one of my cousins, she went missing. I asked a certain person if she could kindly just share my cousin's missing poster on her socials. She ignored it. Never shared it once, which I thought was weird because we were cool. What is with that? Have you guys ever been through something like that, on a side note, where you know someone's missing or a family member's missing, and you ask people on your socials to share the missing poster and they never do. Isn't that the most oddest as fuck thing ever? Doesn't that really show you your morals and their lack of heart? I don't know. I just think it's so weird. On a side note, anyway, that I asked this one lady to share my missing cousin poster, and sadly, this cousin ended up passing away. But karma, because I asked her to share it so many times, her son ended up going missing, and she had to make missing wanted posters. So I think she knew at the time not to ask me to share the photos, but because I'm not an asshole and I would like to rise above and not stew to their low, I would have shared her missing son's photo, even though she didn't share my missing cousin's photos. But that's just me, you know? I'm not a heartless dick. But hey, karma. Now she gets to experience what it's like to see a family member on a missing poster. It's fucking frightening. That's just a side note. I'm sorry, guys. I had nothing to do with the Larissa McComas, but I guess I just keep going on like a broken record. It's just like people's lack of laziness and sharing this on the social media, like Larissa's case, even though she wasn't missing. It's the lack of sharing, getting it out there. It takes a click, share, boom. You know, if there would have been more clicks and more shares, this could have been solved. And just like my cousin, you know, like they could have maybe found her earlier than what has been. And also, on a side note, I also had another cousin go missing, and I asked people to share his photo too, and they're not in the biggest rush. So, really, it just goes to show you where people's mind mentalities of, well, more so their level of compassion of where they're at mentally and how they really care and feel about another human. But I guess they will only really care until it happens to them. But I just, on a side note, I thought that was ironic. I asked that chick to share my missing cousin photo of her, and a couple months later, her son goes missing. Karma. Sorry, but if that's not shoving it in your face from the spiritual world, going, hey, he asked you to share that photo a million times. Now your son's on a missing poster. Karma. And again, I would have shared her missing son's photo, even though she didn't share mine. So you guys got to stop being lazy when stuff like this, or someone maybe gets murdered or goes missing, and there's people out there asking you to share the petitions online or share the links online that could really help these cases of missing or people that got murdered. In my opinion, it sure could help fasten the process and alleviate all of the mental pain that physically drains the family and friends of worrying about this. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in for my little dog and pony show, as I always call it. I will have more mysteries. The next couple episodes are going to be very, very interesting. Again, more topics that have not been talked about. But I also wanted to mention before I leave that you guys should go check out Audrey's dog shampoo. I don't have it on me, but it's the world's most famous dog shampoo. Just click in Audrey dog shampoo and you shall find it. And the one I personally would recommend is the Snow White, I think it's called. It makes your dog's hair look real bright, and she smells fantastic. My dog Jacuzzi. Yes, that's my dog's name, Jacuzzi. So, anyways, guys, I hope you're having a fantastic day, night, evening, morning, whatever the fuck you're doing. And before I leave this, I just hope Sandy Bentley is having a wonderful evening, day, wherever she is in her little apartment. But I'm just playing. That's just a joke, in my opinion. I really do think she is the bee's knees. Her pictorials were pretty good. And anyway, Sandy Bentley, I hope you're subscribing. I hope you do too. And I hope you enjoy, things while you have them. And yeah, I hope everyone who enjoyed this episode as well. I hope you enjoyed it because it's really something I like to talk about. People that have not. I guess Larissa's case on a side note. Now that I'm done talking about Sandy jokes, but yeah, Larissa's case, I like discovering all these random cases that have just never been talked about enough, and I'm really just hoping that you guys enjoy them and maybe even share them just to kind of get the word out there. And I don't know, it's a real shame that Larissa died so young and she had a family left behind. So I'm hoping the guy who did her website and petition maybe will contact me, and I'd love to do an interview with them sometime down the line. And I don't know what else to say. I'm rambling like an idiot. I feel like when I do these, I'm like on a blind date. So have a good day, everybody.